Hey, what's going on, Who That Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones. And yes, I am the host of the State of the Saints podcast. And thank you all so much for checking out the State of the Saints podcast, where we talk New Orleans Saints. Really do appreciate your time. Much love to each and every one of you that are checking out this edition. I want to give a special shout out to all the people that listened to previous episodes and also been checking out the State of the Saints podcast shorts that we've been putting out. On yesterday, we talked a little bit about the NFL Combine and what we should be looking forward to, or at least what I'm looking forward to when it comes to the New Orleans Saints, and seeing some of these players that have been linked to the team and how they perform at the NFL Combine. Now, we all know that every single year there are players at the NFL Combine that we want to see, we would like to see go out there and practice and and do something, show their skills. But this is a different day and age now. You don't really see too many guys out there, especially if they're high profile guys, that went out there on a collegiate level and really put some really good tape together. A lot of them are on the fence about competing because we know how social media does. People overreact. And the next thing you know, this guy is highly touted. Let's just say if he don't bench press the way that you expect him to, or run a 40 the time that you expect him to, all of a sudden he's in bust territory. So a lot of these guys have that in mind. And so they go to the combine and they talk to the media. They do all the other things like the physicals and et cetera, but they don't compete. And, they say, let the tape speak for itself, what they put forth in college, which I have no problem with, but you would like to see like some of these high profile players at least go out there and show their skills. To me, I don't feel like if they have a bad combine, that means that they're going to be a bad player. I can remember Ted Johnson. Ted Johnson, he had a very rough combine. But if you look at Ted Johnson and what he has been doing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you have to say, man, this guy's on the rise. So, sometimes the guys can get a little nervous. Sometimes they can get a little antsy and it may show up, but that doesn't mean that is going to be the type of player they're going to be. But I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of these players at the NFL Combine. I'm actually leaving this evening, and I'm at home right now, and I'll be in Indianapolis on tomorrow. So I'll give you all like more content and what's going on there. I believe on the first day, which is today, most of the media speaks to the coaches. I believe you have a few coaches that speak to the media. The New Orleans Saints on one of those teams. The Saints general manager Mickey Loomis and head coaches in the past, they just don't talk to the media. I don't understand why, but they just don't talk to the national media. Most of the time, what they do is they'll have like some reporters and stuff like that, and they'll tell them to meet in a certain spot, so you can actually have a sound bite there. So really exclusive stuff there. Too rich for my blood. All right. I still got boots on the ground. All right. Maybe one day I'll be up in that thing with the rest of the crew one day. But unfortunately, I haven't reached that yet. But look, we're going to the combine and I'm extremely excited about it. And one thing I'm extremely excited about, it's not, so much about, brand building or anything like that, because, I don't think I would have a brand or have a podcast if it weren't for people like yourself. And that's the main reason why I love going, is because I want to provide content and also be able to ask questions, from a fan's perspective. Before I got into journalism, before I was out here doing these things, I was a fan, enjoyed the product, and, my passion behind the New Orleans Saints is the reason why I started the State of the Saints in the first place. So just to be on the ground and talk, to so many different players and try to understand where they're coming from. It's a dream come true, man. I came a long way from just starting out, man. I can barely afford a webcam. So I'm excited about that. And feel free to put your comments down below. Who do you feel, or who would you like for me to ask a question to? Like, I can't ask a question to everybody, I'm sure, because how the podiums are set up, you got so many guys like talking at the same time and they kind of rotate. So if you don't get your question in right away and try to pew them out and go to another podium, you might not be able to ask that person a question. But feel free, like, to, put your comments in the chat, put your comments down below if you're watching this show when it's all said and done. Who would you like to hear me ask a question to, or who would you like to hear some commentary from when it comes to some of these NFL prospects? But let's go ahead and get into it, man. I want to talk a little bit about Jordan Tyson. I talked a little bit about that on my daily Saints Talk this morning on Bleacher Report. If you have not checked it out already, make sure you download the Bleacher Report app and check it out. Jordan Tyson is a guy who is linked to the New Orleans Saints. Some draft boards have the Saints taking him at number 8. The 6'2", 6'3" wide receiver out of Arizona State has 75 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 10 touchdowns last season. But he is not competing at the combine. He's dealing with a hamstring injury. And of course, when you start talking about injuries leading up to the draft, leading up to the combine, it always gives individuals a cause to pause. Like, how often does this happen when you start dealing with hamstrings and you're a wide receiver? Like, how would that be able to affect you? Would it be something that'd be a situation that happens over and over, a reoccurring thing? But me personally, I like Jordan Tyson a lot. I think that he's extremely skilled. He's definitely a guy that's going to end up being a number 1 receiver if he can stay healthy. He's a very talented guy. But when you look at the New Orleans Saints and how they're trying to structure this football team, you really don't have a margin for error here. Like, now you can gamble and say, well, we got some talented guys on our roster at wide receiver, and if we get, Jordan Tyson, we can kind of, slowly acclimate him to the offense because we already got some guys out there. But when I look at the New Orleans Saints and I look at this roster and how it's constructed, I think about how congested the wide receiver room was with just 3 guys trying to get the football. When we seen Rashid Shaheed get traded to the Seattle Seahawks, and when we seen Brandon Cooks get released when he went to Buffalo, that's when you start to see other guys like Devon Vele kind of step up. You've seen Mason Tipton taking part in the special teams game, and it seemed like the ball wasn't being able to be distributed around quite a bit, and that was concerning to me. So I'm just wondering, like, with a lot of these new cast of characters that Saints fans are excited about, like Trey Palmer and Jalen Polk and Devon Vele coming back off that knee injury, and we expect big things from Chris Olave. Like, how are you going to be able to distribute the ball all over? That is one of the main reasons why I'm advocating for the Saints to be able to get a dynamic running back. And people have their reservations about Jeremiah Love and drafting a running back in the first round. But this is my question to each and every one of those people. Every running back that has been highly touted that I can think of over the last 5 to 10 years that got drafted in the first round, like, end up living up to expectations. Like, you think about Saquon Barkley, right? Saquon Barkley, I believe, was drafted in 2018 or 2019, one or the other. But he was a top 5 pick, right? And Saquon Barkley almost broke Eric Dickerson's rushing record, and he would have broke it last year. Well, yeah, last year versus the Giants in the final game of the season, but he didn't want to play because the Eagles had the number 1 seed, and this guy isn't about personal accolades, which was commendable on his part. He would have shattered it. I mean, the way that offensive line was blocking for him, he would have got that record. You look at guys like Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs was being compared to Alvin Kamara. I think everybody could agree that Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the most dynamic running backs in the game. Bijan Robinson, like, you may be a Saints fan, but you got to respect how talented this guy is for the Atlanta Falcons. So when you're hearing about guys like this, right, those guys that deserve to be in the top 10 because of how dynamic they are, they can change the trajectory of your offense. And Jeremiah Love seems like he falls into that mode. He's more like a bigger Reggie Bush, right? I mean, to me, he's a better pass catcher than Reggie Bush was. And not only that, he's a guy that can give you high volume runs, right? He can run in between the tackles. He can get vertical with it. And also he can contribute in a passing game. This is one of the reasons why I just think that the Saints need to go after a guy like Jeremiah Love. We're all excited about Tyler Shuck. We're all excited about what Tyler Shuck can bring to the table, what Tyler Shuck can actually do for the New Orleans Saints in year 2. But I don't think the New Orleans Saints should go into year number 2 with all of the hopes and dreams resting on the arm of a Tyler Shuck. If you get yourself a running game, you fix that offensive line to be able to open up holes and create opportunities for these running backs. And then also when you have a dynamic running back like a Jeremiah Love, he has an opportunity to make somebody miss, right? And in this NFL now, man, you got to have a dynamic running back. Like, I mean, you have these really talented, athletic defensive ends that are getting past these offensive linemen, and they're not going to be able to block and protect every single time. You're going to need a running back that is going to be able to make somebody miss, break a tackle, turn a 2-yard gain into a 4-yard gain or a 22-yard gain, depending on how much daylight that he has. So that's why I'm going to continue to lobby for Jeremiah Love until the Saints, draft otherwise. I mean, I just think that this is the most logical solution to what the New Orleans Saints need. Now, we can talk about offensive linemen, interior linemen, and stuff like that. I mean, we can talk about that all day and night. I think we all understand the Saints need that, but I just believe that the New Orleans Saints need to get back to running the football, right? Being that dynamic offense. And I think about some of the guys that Kellen Moore has worked with that has been those all-purpose guys, like Ezekiel Elliott. Then when he went to the Chargers, he had Austin Eckler, right? And then, of course, Saquon Barkley. So just imagine what Kellen Moore can do with a player like Jeremiah Love, creating opportunities for him. Now, I know that if you look at a lot of draft boards, and I'm going to get to the questions in just a minute. I just want to make sure, we have enough so we can have a good little flow going. But when you look at, the running back position, when you look at like some of these all-purpose backs, once again, Kellen Moore is the guy that, has found success with these type of players. And if the New Orleans Saints can be able to get those dynamic players and be able to utilize them, and we know that Kellen Moore can, I just think that it opens up great opportunities and possibilities for the New Orleans Saints to be able to be successful offensively. That's the direction I feel like the New Orleans Saints need to go in. Now, once again, we can talk about offensive linemen all day and night. We can talk about what the New Orleans Saints need, as far as, this position and that position. But I think that we all can agree that the New Orleans Saints could really utilize a guy like Jeremiah Love. And no, I'm not disrespecting Alvin Kamara, but at the same time, Alvin has been injured. And, Alvin, I've heard on several interviews that he has been a part of, he's open to the fact of actually having another running back in there to be able to alleviate some pressure off of him. And I just think that the New Orleans Saints need to consider that. And, I like Devin Neal, I like Miller, I like those guys, but at the same time, they have been injured. Like they've been dealing with injuries. And look, man, you got to be able to be consistent, right, on the field. So I feel like nobody's job should just be secure based on, the production over the last couple of years. The Saints have got to find a way to be able to utilize this running game and not put so much pressure on the passing game. I mean, sometimes you got to be able to rely on the running game. Like you look at the Super Bowl, right? And look, some people might think that I'm crazy talking about the Super Bowl, but if you look at the way that the Seattle Seahawks were able to just basically take the ball out of the air and just put it into the hands of Kenneth Walker and allow him to run the football. And look, nobody loves 3 yards in a cloud of dust every single Sunday, right? I mean, unless you like a real old school fan, right? But at the same time, like you got to be able to have a potent running game to be able to complement your passing game. And if you have that, then you have yourself a really good balanced attack, and it makes it very, very difficult for teams to be able to figure out what you're going to do from Sunday to Sunday, right? But let's go ahead and get into it. My final thing. Now I thought about it. All right. And I know that they have a lot of mock drafts out there. I know they got a lot of mock drafts out there. Everybody's talking about Jeremiah Love to the Chiefs. Look, you're not going to convince me that the Chiefs need Jeremiah Love more than the New Orleans Saints need Jeremiah Love. The Kansas City Chiefs had Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. And these guys are very, very capable. These mock drafts, I don't care what anybody says. You can get mad at me all you want to. These mock draft that has Jeremiah Love going to the Kansas City Chiefs, this is basically what these prognosticators want versus what they actually need in Kansas City. Because if you look at Kansas City, all right, you got Rashee Rice, who is very talented, but can't seem to stay out of trouble. You got Travis Kelce, who is about a year younger than I am, right? And you can really start to see a little bit of the decline in play last season, right? You got Hollywood Brown out there. He's capable, but, he's not that number one guy, right? And, you got a couple of little speedsters down the field. So who's to say that the Kansas City Chiefs can't go for a guy like Cordell Tate or go after a guy like Jordan Tyson, somebody that they know that probably don't really have too many character issues, and that's somebody that can be a reliable target for Patrick Mahomes. But it's more so like they want the rich to get richer so Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs can get back to their winning ways and provide ratings and attention to whatever the hell they talking about. You're not about to convince me that the Kansas City Chiefs need a player like Jeremiah Love more than the Saints do. The Saints have not had a consistent run game since I have to say about 2020. And this is no disrespect to anybody that's come through that door, but they really haven't been running that rock and had success where you can count on it week after week after week since you had the dynamic of Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara for the second time. Other than that, we have not seen a running game scare anybody. It used to be the Saints running game used to be like they used to scare people, right? Because you had the guy that can catch the ball out of backfield, running between the tackles. You basically had, Mark Ingram, who became a much better pass catcher in the latter part of his career, and that made the Saints even more dangerous. But we haven't seen that, right? Now it's like when you look at the New Orleans Saints, it's like they trying to make something work in a running game. It's like whoever back there, just do your best, right? You would like to have a running back that you know for a fact that teams are going to have to scheme for. Defensive coordinators have to stay up a little bit late at night in order for them to try to find and devise a plan to neutralize the running game. I haven't seen that. And I'm just saying, I just think that is laughable. And I get it. When we're talking about these high profile teams and these teams that have been contenders and these teams that go to the playoffs more so than not, and Super Bowl every year, like you want to find other players that are just as dynamic as the players that are on the team, right? Because you want to make this superpower team that everybody's excited to see. But at the same time, you're not going to convince me. There's not a mock draft out there. There's not a scout out there that can convince me that the Saints don't need Jeremiah Love more so than the Kansas City Chiefs do. And honestly, I feel like it's rather apropos of the New Orleans Saints to be able to draft a player that the Kansas City Chiefs want. Since the Kansas City Chiefs want to jump in front of the Saints back in 2017 to take Patrick Mahomes, and we all know the story. Now, the Saints end up getting Laddie Daddy, which, in my opinion, he is the best cornerback to ever put on the Saints uniform. So both teams won. But at the same time, who's to say, like, if the Saints would have drafted Patrick Mahomes in 2017, how things would be looking right now as far as the franchise? So if the New Orleans Saints like Jeremiah Love, and look, you can think back to 2017, Mick, why not, right? I mean, that's the player that you want. So why not go after him? Shouts out to everybody in here right now. I want to give a special shout out to Aaron. Thank you very much for the $5. Says, I'm prepared for the Saints to not draft anyone we're looking at. Well, look, I just think that you shouldn't make this process harder than what it has to be, Aaron. And look, we're on the outside looking in. I will admit that, right? I mean, these teams, they're supposed to do their due diligence. They burn the midnight oil. They watch these players. They interview these players. And, it was one of those situations when I was at the Combine last year. I actually asked Kelvin Banks, who ended up being the Saints' first round pick, did he talk to the Saints? And he went to like a long detail. Like, I only gave y'all like little minor parts of what he talked about in other questions, because I had like follow-ups, but he was like, yeah, I talked to the Saints and they really kind of grilled me. And when he said that, I was like, yeah, they must really be interested in Calvin Banks. And it was a really good decision, man. Like, some people was like, oh, man, we drafted an offensive lineman again. The Saints drafting an offensive lineman again. But look, I don't think anybody feels it was a mistake drafting Calvin Banks Jr. I mean, he's a good kid. He works hard. He was out there every single Sunday. He got injured the last game of the season, which was unfortunate. It wasn't his fault. Somebody just rolled up on the back of his leg. I believe it was Juwan Johnson. I mean, friendly fire there. And this guy's talented. He's a cornerstone player, in my opinion. I think as long as he stays healthy, we're going to revere Calvin Banks Jr. like we revered Teron Armstead and some of these other guys that like Javon Bushbride. Shouts out to Big Bush. You know, like these type of guys. So to me, don't make the situation harder than what it has to be, right? I mean, look, I know that it's the 8th pick and you want to make sure that you get it right, but man, if you can get a dynamic running back, you got to be able to trust the process. I trust Kellen Moore because of his background and his experience dealing with guys that are so versatile at the running back position. I think that you combine the Saints passing attack with Tyler Shuck and Chris Olave, and maybe like in the second round, you can be able to grab another wide receiver or something like that late. Like, man, this is a talented group of receivers, man. Like, y'all are going to be looking at, I guarantee you, in this draft, I guarantee you there's going to be a player that's going to be flying under the radar at the wide receiver position, and he's going to go on and have a really solid career, and people going to know his name. I guarantee you, you know, because this is one of those drafts where you can find a diamond in the rough type receiver, and that player can end up being very, very good. So if the Saints don't end up getting like a familiar name that you probably are used to or you've been hearing draft scouts talking about, that don't mean that the Saints didn't find the right guy. So we like I said, just if they draft, like, let's just say, for example, if they draft Sonny Styles, the linebacker out of Ohio State, I'm not mad at that because this guy is, to me, like when I watch the tape, he reminds me of Fred Warner. Like I did like a whole breakdown on him. He reminds me of Fred Warner. If the Saints can get a guy like that, and we know that the Saints are looking for speed at the linebacker position, which is one of the reasons why we start to see like them kind of rotate linebackers throughout the season, right? You start to see more Danny Stutzman come in. You know, Pete Warner, his snap count started to kind of go down to replace, other guys to come in, right? Stallbird started playing a little bit. Jalen Ford started getting into the action because these guys are flying around, sideline to sidelines. I don't have an issue with that, right? Sometimes like we get ourselves all hyped up and excited about a certain player, and then when they don't get drafted, we like, man, we didn't need that. Well, the Saints need everything. And I unless we're talking about, as of right now, upon the making of this video, we're talking quarterback, we talking, left tackle or something like that. Like, those are like the only positions that I feel like right tackle, places like that, where you don't have to go out here in the first round and address. Other than that, like if they end up drafting anything else, like an offensive guard or something like that, that's a top 10. Is understandable. You may not want that to happen because you're so frustrated at the Saints always drafting offensive linemen at the top of the draft. But if that player ends up panning out, guess what? It was a really good decision. So there's that. Let me scroll down a little bit. It says, why the Saints walk around like some prestigious organization, not talking to the media? Like, why? Well, that's just the way that they operate, man. The Saints like to keep things kind of close to the vest, and that's just the way that they do things, man. Like if you ever like go to like the Senior Bowl or anything like that, man, you don't see the Saints, coaches and stuff like that out there like that. Like most of the time, like I said, they will probably say, we're going to do a press conference in like 10 minutes, and then they'll like let the media know where they're going to be at. And, I think it's for them to be able to like kind of police the situation. You got other teams that, don't really care. Like they'll just go to the podium. I expect for like teams like the New England Patriots, I expect for the Giants or with John Harbaugh, like teams like that, like the coaches are going to talk. But the Saints just don't operate like that. They're one of those organizations that like to keep things close to the vest, and They got their media people that they trust in order to put those things out there. Like I said, maybe one day I'll find myself in that situation. I feel like my credentials speak for itself, but at the end of the day, like I'm okay with I'm okay with getting the information and breaking it down because shouts out to the Saints beat writers and so many of them that work so hard, man. And I have nothing but respect for them because man, they're always kind enough, to give me like information and stuff like that. If I'm needing in order for me to create the content and be able to bring it to you. But I can't tell you why. I can't tell you why. Let's see, TJ, can you explain Tyson's injury in college and are they possibly career threatening if it's a repeat injury to his knees, for example? Thanks, bro. Keep up the good work. Well, look, let's go ahead and I'll go ahead and break it down. I think I actually have a sheet here. Let me break down some of his injuries here. I'm trying to pull it up. Let's see. 1 second. Now I can tell you this. He's dealing with a hamstring injury, and that's one of the main reasons as to why he's not going to do anything at the combine. Now, if you were to ask me if he wasn't injured, would he still be taking a part in activities at the combine? Probably not. Probably would do something extremely light. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of his injuries here. Okay, so back in 2022, he had a severe knee injury. All right, he tore his ACL, MCL, and PCL while he was at Colorado. All right. Then in 2024, he suffered a collarbone injury. He missed the college football playoff game because of it. That was in 2024. And in 2025, he had a hamstring injury, which was soft tissue. Occurred in October 2025 versus Texas Tech. He missed about 3 games and also had reports of soft tissue issues keeping him out since mid-October. So there were some injuries that he dealt with. I mean, when you're dealing with ACL, MCL, and PCL, I mean, that's very serious stuff right there. The fact that he was able to come back and play and be as dynamic as he was the next 2 years that he was in college is pretty remarkable. Now, when you're dealing with all of those injuries, you have to ask yourself, like, is this the right decision? Now, you can have yourself a little bit of uncertainty and some of the things that happened in the past pertaining to some of the guys that the Saints have selected coming out of college, guys like Peyton Turner, guys like Davenport, right? They've had a history of having some injuries, and the New Orleans Saints decided to take a chance, but I don't think that you are in a position right now to go out there and take a chance on anybody. Like, you got to make sure that you have a guy out there that's ready to rock and roll. And look, and you might have a guy who is fresh as a daisy, right? Never been injured, never broke a fingernail, right? But he goes to the NFL and might have some issues staying healthy. So you can't really tell. And then, you have a guy that has history of being injured in college. He goes to the NFL and he's never injured, right? He's never injured. So it's one of those, like, damn if you do, damn if you don't type things. But me personally, I just think that the Saints can't afford to do that, right? Shouts out to Ralph Marlboro from Saints Happy Hour. He mentioned this on X. He tweeted this. He was like, if the Saints decided to trade down, right, and and be able to collect some draft capital, and let's just say, for example, Jordan Tyson is there, like if you picking at, I don't know, 19 or something like that, right? Move down to 19 or 18, and he's still there. Like, why the freak not, right? Because I'm pretty sure you got yourself a very, very substantial return on making a trade with a team. So you probably going to get yourself a second round pick or something of that nature. So you'll be able to address like something else. But if we're talking about at number 8 with that type of history, like you better make sure you're doing your due diligence. I'm not going to say, the Saints shouldn't make that decision, because this guy bounced back from that and had 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns off 75 receptions, right? And he missed some games. So imagine if he would have stayed healthy, we would have been talking about a guy that probably would have been putting up some type of historical numbers at Arizona State. But at the end of the day, You got to do the right thing. You got to make sure that you're dotting the I's. You got to make sure that you're crossing the T's. And if the Saints do that and they decide to, to draft him, and yeah, some Saints fans are going to be upset. They're going to bring up the injury history, of course. But if the player ends up panning out, then nobody is going to care, right? It only matters because, it matters. And when it doesn't matter, guess what? We don't care. So, but regardless to what the New Orleans Saints do, they just hope that they make the right decision. So with Mike Evans, LOL, Lattimore ain't on the team no more. He will fit good. Well, look, Mike Evans is a very talented wide receiver, I'm sure. If the Saints were to sign him, I mean, I wouldn't have an issue with it. Look, if he can contribute and bring something to the team, that's fine. But I don't believe that Mike Evans will want to play for the New Orleans Saints, right? I mean, I think it would have to be a means to an end, and he's not at that stage of his career. It's not like this man is just washed or something like that. Like every time Mike Evans is in the lineup, he shows you very, very quickly that he is still among the top wide receivers in the game. And look, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh man, he played for this team, I don't like him. Like I respect good football. I don't care who they play for. Like I don't care if they're a Falcon. I don't care if they're a Panther. I don't care if they're a Buck. I give respect where respect is due. If I'm watching a New Orleans Saints game and I'm watching these guys and, do I want to see the Saints get the best of them? Absolutely. But if they don't, that's a testament to those players' greatness. I have no issue with Mike Evans as a player or anything like that. I think he would be a good addition because he still has something left in the tank, and he's showing it, and it don't seem like he's slowing down. But with that being said, he can still go out there and find a really good suitor where he can still be a key contributor on whatever team if he don't decide to go back to Tampa. Because right now, Mike Evans, he pretty much can take a victory lap here. He's already won a Super Bowl. To me, I think that he's going to be a Hall of Famer. May not be first ballot, but he probably end up being a Hall of Famer down the line. Putting up those multiple 1,000-yard seasons. I want to say 10 or 11. And like I said, he had a really significant injury last season. He came back, and in the first game, he went over 100 yards. So he's still going to get wooed by a lot of these teams out here that's going to try to acquire his service if he can't get something done in Tampa. So with that, I'm like, if you have a choice to maybe play for the Eagles, right? Or have a choice maybe playing for the Cowboys or playing for the Commanders or something like that, like why not, right? You don't have to really too much worry about money. Like I said, you already got a Super Bowl championship. People already look at you as one of the best wide receivers of your generation. So why not? But if he was to, be signed by the Saints, I wouldn't care. I think that he would be a really good player. And I guarantee you won't have to worry about if Mike Evans is going to be available and be ready to rock and roll and give 100% effort on Sundays. As long as he's healthy, he's going to be all right. Lattimore was getting cooked in Washington. Yeah, I mean, he was getting cooked in Washington. And, man, I'm not going to sit up here and laugh at no Marshawn Lattimore because here's the reality. Marshawn Lattimore was the best cornerback in New Orleans Saints history. I don't care who and what people try to put up. I don't care what cornerback you try to bring to the forefront. Nobody, to me, impacted the game at the cornerback position better than Marshawn Lattimore. That will travel with the best team's receiver all game long and for the most part get the best out of it. And, when people leave, we have a tendency of basically, sometimes cracking jokes of saying that they washed and all that kind of stuff there. But when Marshawn Lattimore was in the Saints uniform, everybody was cheering for this man to make plays. And Marshawn Lattimore made plays. And look, when you play football long enough, you play sports long enough, guess what? When you start to get injured and you start to have those little nicks and knacks, right? And you start dealing with them, of course you're going to slow down. Of course you're going to have ailments that's going to prohibit you from being able to play and be at 100%, but you want to just be out there for your guys. I would never disrespect Marshawn Lattimore like that because this man gave everything he could to the city of New Orleans when he was out there. and he pretty much solidified himself as a really good corner. Now, in Washington, was it the ideal situation? Absolutely not. And yes, there were some moments where you have to wonder to yourself, does he still got it? But if Marshawn Lattimore was available and he wanted to come back to New Orleans, I wouldn't have no issue with it. I think that he would be able to provide something to that cornerback room. I think a lot of what was going on in Washington had a lot to do with the scheme and how they were utilizing him. And, is he going to be the same player? No. But I don't think that he's like the worst cornerback that we've ever seen. And, I'll never talk bad about Marshawn Lattimore like that, because this man to me was the best. He was the best. Like, if you've been rocking with the Saints pre-Lattimore, you know what I'm talking about. Like, the Saints couldn't stop nobody in the secondary. Nobody. I mean, they were getting roasted and toasted every single week. I mean, players didn't turn their heads around, like ball hitting them boys in the back of their head, like guys catching the ball off the back of their helmets because nobody turned around, bad containment, just bad position, all that. And then all of a sudden in 2017, the Saints draft Lattimore, and it took him only one season for everybody to know that the Saints had a lockdown corner. So I'm not going to make fun of this guy. It wasn't the best situation in Washington, but at the same time, Lattimore is the best in my opinion. And it was hard for anybody to make me think negative towards Marshawn Lattimore, period. Evans can go to any team he wants to, but please not the Saints. Look, man, if he's a good player and he can come in and help the New Orleans Saints win, fine. I'll give you another example. What about Ted Ginn Jr.? Y'all remember Ted Ginn Jr. before he came to the Saints? Who did he play for? He played for the Carolina Panthers. And Ted Ginn Jr. used to light the Saints up. I can remember there was one game where the Saints played an undefeated Carolina Panthers team. It was the same year the Carolina Panthers went to the Super Bowl. If Ted Ginn Jr. could catch much better than he did in that game, if he was catching passes, he would have had 4 touchdowns in that game, because he was out there working the New Orleans Saints, working them boys. But guess what? When Ted Ginn Jr. came to the New Orleans Saints, he became a deep threat. Everybody who loved themselves from Ted Ginn Jr. I don't care. Here's the thing. If you play for a team, you want to give your all to that team. And guess what? The rivals that you have, the fan bases, oh, man, I don't like that guy. Guess what? You don't like him for the most part because he putting foots in your team. He's getting the best of your team. I don't have an issue with that. If he comes to the Saints, fine. It's not like he coming to the Saints with a Tampa Bay Buccaneers uniform on and coming into the locker room to infiltrate it. He's coming in to try to help the team be better. So why wouldn't you want that? Why? Because he played for the Bucs? Come on, man. You can't help where you were drafted. Look, I guarantee you right now, let's go ahead and keep it a buck. Some of you have kids up in here. Some of your kids right now playing football. Now, if your kid got drafted to the Bucs, Carolina, or the Falcons, you telling me that all of a sudden, you just gonna disown your kid? Or you gonna, not okay, man, I love my kid, but I ain't rocking. Hell nah. No. You gonna support that, that decision. You're gonna support your kid. You're gonna support it because that's your bloodline right there. So you're gonna support that. It as crazy and as weird and as frustrating as it may be for you, that's my whole point. They're on that team. You gotta they're gonna support that team. But if he comes to your team, the team that you love, to me, like I said, if he not coming in to try to mess your squad up. He coming there to try to catch touchdowns from your quarterback and put yards up to help your team. So, I get it from like I said, from a psychological standpoint, there's just certain players man, you see them and it's man, I couldn't imagine him being in the Saints uniform. Think about this. Think about Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston, he's since we talk about Mike Evans, Marshawn Lattimore, he's the guy that really started the beef. he started the beef. Like when he put his finger behind Marshawn Lattimore's head and Marshawn Lattimore kind of flicked back, and then you have Mike Evans just come in to try to help his quarterback out. But look, when Jameis Winston ended up getting released by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Saints picked him up. Now, when he came to the Saints and talking to Jameis Winston, man, became one of the most beloved New Orleans Saints that we ever seen. Everybody loved themselves some Jameis Winston, right? Everybody wanted to hear Jameis Winston soundbite or see what he was doing next. So, hey, you know what I'm saying? Like, look, when they on your team, you love them. But when they're away from the team, it's like, man, I can't stand that guy. And C.J. Gardner-Johnson is another one. I give respect. He was the king of the NFC South. Say it's facts, TJ. Look, I respect Mike Evans. I respect good football. I don't care who they play for. I respect good football. See, Winston was messy. But I'm just saying, like, this whole beef started from a guy that Saints fans, like, love, right? Right? They love Jameis Winston, right? Man, Jameis Winston on the mark. I would love to see Jameis back. But Jameis the reason why Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Evans really start beefing in the first place. But, hey, Winston was a free agent at that time. Yeah, I say, like, once he got released, yeah. Once they released him and the Saints picked him up, yeah. If I said trade, I actually meant release, but he was released by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. My whole issue about Lattimore is he can't stay healthy. Yeah, I mean, he can't stay healthy. That's an issue. But man, very, very special player when he was healthy and when he was out there just making things happen. People laughing and it's corny. Let's see. I'm gonna stroll up a little bit. Let's see. I remember the year we drafted Lattimore. He was considered a top 5 pick, but hamstring issues are the reason he fell to us in the draft. Yeah, Larry. I mean, a lot of draft boards. I never forget they had him going. I want to say to the Bears. I think the Bears had a 4th or the 5th pick in the draft. Of course, they end up getting Mitchell Trubisky, which we all know how that panned out for him. But yeah, I mean, Lattimore ended up slipping in the draft, falling to 11 to the Saints. And, of course, we know Patrick Mahomes was drafted before him. But, like I said, but he was, for the most part, he was still able to establish himself as a really good player and one of the best Saints players to play his position. So, to me, I think he did a good job. You think Delane is as good as Lattimore coming out of Ohio State, and would he be a good pick for us in round number 1? I mean, look, Mansour Delane, I think that he would be a really good pick. You have to ask yourself, will the New Orleans Saints go after him? Like, you can say that the Saints need a number 1 corner opposite of Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think that Kool-Aid did some really good things. I think that he did some really good things, like towards the back end of the season. It seemed like he started to get a little bit more confident. He started to emerge to be that cornerback that a lot of Saints writers wrote about and saying that this could be a big year for Kool-Aid. We seen it towards the end of the season. So I guess it's a matter of, do the New Orleans Saints look at Kool-Aid as a number 1 guy, right? Or, do they have confidence in Quincy Riley? Like, do they have confidence in maybe them being able to select or be able to bring in another guy, maybe through free agency, to be a part of their secondary? Right, but Mansour Delane, I think that he will fit in just fine with the Saints. Do I think that the New Orleans Saints may be interested in him? Absolutely. Why wouldn't you be? He's the top corner in the draft. He's the second best, player or secondary wise in the draft to me, other than other than Caleb Downs. Right, Caleb Downs to me is the best. But at the end of the day, if they were to draft him, that's fine. Right. That wouldn't be a bad pick at all. I mean, you're dressed in a position of need, and I think it would be understandable. I think no Saints fan would be against any decision that the Saints make, because they need so many different things, right? They need so many different players to be able to add to this team. So whatever direction they go in, as long as they don't get like no kicker or nothing like that, like the Raiders did when they drafted Janikowski back in the day, I think the Saints would be just fine. TJ, do you think Malachi Lemon at 8 is a good pick despite him being more of a slot wide receiver and a smaller receiver? I think that, if the Saints have a vision for him, I think that that'll be fine. I mean, he's a guy that um, he has a chip on his shoulder. He plays with a level of violence that you want to see from the wide receiver position. You ain't gonna punk this guy around, but like you say, he's more of a slot guy. The New Orleans Saints, they got a fundamentally sound wide receiver in Chris Olave, and I just think that the Saints need that big possession type receiver. Now, if the New Orleans Saints don't get that, like let's just say, for example, if the New Orleans Saints don't draft that type of position guy, I think we pretty much know the reason why. And if you don't, I'll tell you. The reason why the New Orleans Saints wouldn't draft that position is because they have that much belief in Devon Vele. And to be quite honest with you folks, what have you not seen from Devon Vele that makes you feel like he can't be what you think Cardell Tate can be? There were times on Sunday where I looked at Devon Vele and I was wondering, like, was he the best wide receiver on the team? Right? So to me, I don't think that if the Saints don't go after a Cardell Tate or they don't go after Jordan Tyson in the first round, I don't think that's negligence on their part. I think it's them speaking very loudly that they like what they saw from Devon Vele and they feel like Devon Vele can fill that role, which me personally, I think he can. Now, at the beginning of the season when the Saints made the trade and you barely seen him, right? You seen a lunar eclipse more than you seen Devon Vele. You were like, man, what did this guy bring to the table, right? It was like, okay, man, this guy big, tall, but what else can he do, right? But when we seen Shaheed move on, Brandon Cooks leave, that's when we start to see Devon Vele come alive. I'm talking about big play after big play. 3rd and 13, he getting 14 yards. 3rd and 18, he getting 19 yards. Like in the back of the end zone, catching passes, contested catches. So he's giving you what you're looking for from a wide receiver perspective, what Saints fans been looking for and what you actually need, which is that big body guy that can come down with the football in traffic. So if the Saints don't draft a Cardell Tate, if they don't draft a Jordan Tyson, if they, don't get a Malachi Lemon, like it's okay because it seems like they're confident in their wide receiver room. Now, I still think that you have to address, the wide receiver position and maybe get some depth there on some guys that you can actually trust to be available, right? I'm interested to see what Jalen Pope can do. I'm interested to see what Trey Palmer can do. But right now, these are two guys that missed the entire season. So I like wide receiver Malachi Lemon and Denzel Washington. Denzel Boston. I know what you mean, man. But look, I look, Denzel Boston, yeah, he's another guy. Definitely one of those players that you can end up getting like in the second round, right? A guy that you can probably get, and be able to come in and be able to be some things for your team that you need. So, but yeah. I mean, I like Lemon's. I like the way that he approaches the game, right? He's not the biggest guy in the world, but like I said, you ain't going to punk him, man. Love will change the whole offense. We will be a top 5, no doubt. Yeah, if they draft him, I just think that it just helps your offense tremendously. And like I said, the one thing that stuck out at the final press conference of the season that featured Mickey Loomis and head coach Kellen Moore was when Mickey Loomis, basically said, and I'm paraphrasing here, he was like, it's great to see what we saw from Tyler Shuck, but you don't want to just go into the season like, okay, man, this is my guy and not put anything around him and put all your hopes and dreams in the quarterback position. Like you got to be able to find other ways, man, to make the quarterback comfortable rather than just fixing the offensive line so he can be able to have some time to make the right decisions. Rather it's the running game. If the offense isn't working that day, right? If it's raining outside, like if it's snowing, or like it just you're playing against a really good defense against the pass. Like how are you going to be able to neutralize what this team is doing if you don't have yourself a running attack, right? So when I look at the Saints, like, it's fine and great that everybody's excited about Tyler Shuck, which, he showed you that you should be. But to say, like, okay, man, all our problems are over if you're a Saints fan, that you got Tyler Shuck. Well, who else do you have? I don't look. People love nostalgia in New Orleans. They love, like, when things kind of like come full circle, or a little bit of deja vu. But I don't want to see the deja vu when a quarterback have to carry the team on his back every single week because everything else around him is incompetent. Like, we know that Drew Brees used to carry the Saints more Sundays than not because it's rather the defense wasn't good enough. It's rather, the special teams screwing up. Like, I don't think that you need to build your team around it. And like I said, you should be happy that the Saints found the quarterback in Tyler Shuck because of what he can bring to the table. If you build something around him, right, then your team can be able to find more success than not. That's great. But you don't want to just go into the season in 2026 like, oh, man, we got Shuck. We good. Well, what else do you have? What if something happens? What if, like, your depth chart at the receiver position goes down? It's not out of the realm of possibility of happening. So what you going to rely on then? So you got to be able to have balance. You got to be able to have balance. So they should not be looking at this offense like, oh, we got Shuck and that's enough. And if you're a Saints fan and you're looking at it that way, so you just start kind of like looking at other positions, you shouldn't, right? You should always be thinking about how you can improve your team, right? It's like if you get a house, right? You get yourself a house and it's great. Like, but you got a house, but now you got to start like building other things, like be able to bring things in, right? Maybe there's a room in the back that you can probably, break the wall out and become a sunroom or something. Like, you always should be trying to find ways to, like, improve your situation. And if the New Orleans Saints just kind of rest on their laurels of the fact that they seen 9 games of consistent quarterback play from Tyler Shuck, so that's what we're going to be good in 2026, I can't see much winning going on because, you got to be able to build on what you actually have in house and, build on the momentum that you have. Bub means still injured. I don't think he's still injured. And, I know he's still on the team because he was on the parade float during Mardi Gras on last week. But let's see. Says, get love, get a good wide receiver, get some good edge rushers, beef up the interior D-line, and get a guard. We Super Bowl bound, baby. I mean, look, those are definitely things that you need to address, right? Get yourself, a young edge rusher, somebody that's probably late 3rd, 4th round pick, and trust and believe if you get a guy in the 4th round, man, they got some guys that are really, really good, like, really good edge rushers. Probably going to be like from, a couple of schools that you probably aren't familiar with, but, man, they got some really good pass rushers. I've seen quite a few. I want to say Nadeal Tucker is one of those guys. He's out of Western Michigan. Now, when they played in the Myrtle Beach Bowl against Kennesaw State, he didn't play. Right. It was actually the coach's decision. The coach actually decided not to let him play because they didn't want him to, like, possibly hurt himself and affect his draft stock. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Tucker is going to do out there. This is a guy who had 14.5 sacks, and he kind of fits that hybrid defensive end / linebacker role that a lot of teams have been going for these days. So, I mean, and he's probably going to be a 3rd round pick. So, yeah, you get yourself a good edge rush, but you definitely got to get an interior lineman. Like, rather you getting them through the draft or free agency. Me personally, I think you need to do both. Maybe, like, get yourself an interior lineman that you can develop, and maybe, if you want to sign a guard, maybe to a 2 or 3 year deal and see where you are as far as the offensive line, once that contract is up. But even with that, like, that player might end up playing the way that the Saints offensive line has been snake bitten when it comes to the injury. So you want to make sure that you actually have a really good depth piece and a really good solid starter at the guard position. TJ, do you think Lemon at 8 is a good? I read that, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be objective to that, but you have to ask yourself, is that the right decision? And would you actually really truly need that type of wide receiver with that skill set? What about Keontae Scott as a second or third round pick? Oh yeah, I like Keontae Scott. I think that he's made of the right stuff. Really, I feel like he really boosted stock during the college football playoff. And before the playoff, I think he probably would have been like a fourth round, late third round pick. But the confidence that he plays with and being on that big stage really opened a lot of scouts' eyes to how talented he is. So if he was a second round pick, like I would love to see him in the Saints uniform. And that is something that you might need to take into consideration, B Jamming, because we're talking about Alontae Taylor testing the free agent market, right? And he's going to get top dollar. So if he ends up like getting wooed away from the Saints, then we're talking about somebody else that has to fill that void at the slot. And Keontae Scott definitely can do that. I mean, he's definitely going to be ready to play in a slot. I think he'll be a day one starter. You're not going to shake his confidence because he plays with so much confidence, and he's a guy that that's athletic. He's not afraid to make tackles. You're not going to have to wonder like, okay, did Scott come out here to play? So he's one of those dogs that I think that everybody needs to have on their team. Based on his tape, based on the way that he plays the game, his play recognition. And I think that once again, this college football playoff really opened the eyes to a lot of people about Keontae Scott. He's a really good player, and I think he'll be a really good slot corner if the Saints were to draft him in the second round. I'm excited to see Vernon Broughton. Yeah, I think Vernon Broughton, he was showing some really good things before he got hurt, and the coaches were excited about him, and every time they bring up that interior line, they always talking about Broughton. So that tells you everything that you need to know. Like they have confidence in his abilities to be able to go out there and make plays, and I think that he'll come back 100% and ready to contribute. Matter of fact, you can ask Mike Evans and Julio Jones about Lattimore. Both of them knew they were in for a battle. Yeah, I mean, look, players want to get the best of players if they play the opposing position, right? Like if you're a wide receiver, you want to get the best of a corner, but you know who the real dogs are, right? You know who the real dogs are. You know it's going to be a tough out, and they may not want to admit it because, you got to carry yourself with a level of confidence, right? And sometimes you got to shield your real true feelings towards said player, right? In order for you to go out there and make things happen. But the ballers know who can really ball and they know who can't. I can tell you that. Like they may say a bunch of positive and give a bunch of bland pleasantries like when the camera is on, but behind the scenes, like they let you know if these boys are trash and they ain't worth their time. I think the Saints should draft Zachariah Branch in the later rounds, and I'm only saying this: we need return specialists. Yeah, look, the Saints have done a really good job, Dalton, at finding these diamonds in the rough on special teams. I mean, Deontay Hardy was a really good return man, and then after him, you had Rashid Shaheed, which we see what Rashid has done and with the Saints and what he continues to do even in Seattle, right? But you look, special teams is such an underrated position, and when we're talking about special teams, like nobody really wants to pay attention to that, right? I remember on the NFC South Roundtable, the last episode, there was like, man, what should the Saints like really try to address? And I said, man, I'm gonna go in a different direction. I said the Saints need to like focus on a punter, and they all laughed or whatever. And it was like, man, punter talk in February or whatever. But I'm like, yeah, because look, if you have a bad punter, if you have a bad field goal kicker, right, and you're going into the season, these dudes shanking it left and right, like you're gonna talk about them then, right? And it's very important for you to be able to stabilize that position. So having a return guy that can flip the field, right? Instead of you starting on a 35, now you're starting on a 50, or you're starting on a, in plus territory, right? That is such a weapon to have when you have a player that can flip field, when you have a punter who can put the ball inside of the 10-yard line more so than not, or make sure that the ball is high enough that a guy that's probably a special teams threat won't get an opportunity to advance. Those are weapons to have. And like I said, people don't pay attention to that type of stuff. So, yeah, look, I definitely agree. And look, you can, I agree with you, Dalton. That's just one of those positions where people don't really pay attention to until they have to pay attention to it. It's almost like the offensive line. Nobody really watches offensive line play like this except Brian Baldinger. Shouts out to Baldy. But all of these people, like, we pay attention to the ball, right? I mean, that's just how our mind has been trained to focus on the ball, right? So until like you see an offensive lineman obviously getting beat like a Persian rug, like you don't really say anything about them. And punters are the same, kickers are the same. But yeah, especially having a good key special teams player, yeah, you need one. And Corey says a punter. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm telling you, like, I'm not saying, you want one in second and third round, but look, if they have like a promising punter, and let's just say like in a 6th round or something, I wouldn't be objective to that. Like, if you can find yourself a really good punter, like if you get a Morstead, right? If you can get another Thomas Morstead, who arguing with that? Oh man, you draft the punter, but you keep on dropping them on, inside the 10-yard line, on the 4, on the 3. Like, you ain't gonna say nothing then. Like, yeah, like I said, but if he out here shanking punch and it's the 4th quarter and the game is nip tuck and he shanks a punt and he gives that team really good field position, I bet you we're gonna be talking about punters then, aren't we? Do you think that we should consider any of the tight ends in this draft class? Look, I think the Saints should always consider tight ends. And, I think they should. Like, I don't think that they really have truly established themselves at the tight end position. Yes, Juwan Johnson seemed to have second life after Tyler Shough became the starting quarterback. We started to see a much better version of Juwan Johnson. But, I mean, Jack Stoll, he's off your books. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Foster Moreau is off your books. So you don't have any tight ends on your roster that's available for the exception of Monteval, who you drafted in the 7th round last season. And most of the time he came in was because somebody was hurt or he was a blocking tight end. The Saints need somebody like a Dallas Goedert. They need somebody. I mean, it's a little bit extreme, but like a George Kittle, right? Tyler Warren. Like, they need that type of tight end, like somebody that can block and also be able to pass catch as well. That's a great weapon to have. So yes, I do think that they need to take a look at the tight end. Excuse me, take a look at the tight end position. I think that's important. I don't think there's any position that the New Orleans Saints shouldn't take a look at. We are in bad shape if we draft 1st round pick for a punter. No, absolutely not. No, I'm not saying 1st round for a punter. Like, you doing that. No, that's complete negligence. That's complete negligence right there, right? This is in 1972, when you're out here drafting Ray Guy and stuff like that. Like, no. But what I'm saying is, like, if we're talking about like the late round, 7th round pick or something like that, and you end up drafting a punter, like, why not? But in the 1st round, absolutely not. No way. That's insane. Are there any centers that stand out to you in this draft class? Any centers that not from what I've seen, but I'm looking at it like, if we're talking about guys playing center, like, is that something that the Saints are really going to be focused on like this year? I don't know. Like, I think that maybe a guy that can kind of, be a swing between guard and center. I think that you could probably end up, like maybe drafting. But look, man, Eric McCoy is still going to be the center of this team because the New Orleans Saints look at him and they respect his abilities. Now, it's been very rough for Eric over the last couple of years, but I mean, as long as he's like on the team, the New Orleans Saints are going to keep him around. But I mean, it is a couple guys that that we can focus on. All right, we got Connor Lew out of Auburn, which is he's the top guy. He's considered the number 1 center in the class. He's coming off ACL injury in 2025, which is one of the reasons why I don't think that he'll end up being a number 1 pick, right? In the 1st round, I should say, a 1st round pick. And then you got Jake Slaughter from Florida. He's a center. You can play both guard and center. Then you got Brian Parker, who's out of Duke. Logan Jones, who is really good. He comes out of Iowa. Really good at the run blocking scheme for and also we know how Iowa offensive linemen are, man. They just put an emphasis on the running game out there. So those guys pretty much are coming into the NFL knowing what the heck they're doing. Like, if you get a offensive lineman for Wisconsin or Iowa, like chances are you're going to have yourself some really good offensive line play. But Connor Lew is going to be that guy that a lot of teams are going to be paying attention to. Like I said, that ACL injury is one of the main reasons why he isn't looked at as that round one type offensive lineman, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if he ends up going in the first round. He's that good. But yeah. But those are the guys that stand out. Those are some of the players that at the guard center position that you can keep your eye on. Matt Goblin out of Michigan State, Sam Hetch out of Kansas State. Those are a few guys. Those are your top offensive linemen. So you can go ahead and take a look at those players. Connor Lew is the one that stands out. And probably after him, it's probably going to end up being Logan Jones out of Iowa. Those are the two guys that I think that will come in and make an immediate impact if the Saints were to go after them in the draft. But final thoughts are, number one, I'm extremely excited to be able to cover the NFL Combine for you all this season. I'm leaving out this evening. I'll be there on tomorrow morning. So I want you to keep it locked here to the State of the Saints podcast. We're going to be giving you information pertaining to the NFL Scouting Combine. We will be there all week, until Sunday, and looking forward to it. We'll be doing interviews. I'll try to pull, some people to the side if I can, and also be able to ask some questions to some of the players that want to hear their name called early or at all for the 2026 NFL draft. And if you have any other questions or concerns, feel free to put them in the comments. I would love to hear some players that you all want to see me possibly ask a question to at the NFL Combine. I'll try to do my best to do so. But most importantly, I just thank you all for the love and support that you show here on the State of the Saints podcast channel and in any other venture that I'm a part of. I really do appreciate the support. And I just look forward to giving you all some really good content in Indianapolis. All right. Till next time, all I got to say is, who dat?